All right. Okay, everybody. Today we are here to talk about a dirty word, the S word. It goes by many names, but as a purist, I prefer to be called a professional salesperson. Maybe that's not a term that you're familiar with. So let me hear it from the room. I know you're not a shy bunch. Any of you guys in here that are actual sales professionals, let me hear a little round of applause. Clap if you're a sales professional.
Let's go.
All right. Okay, so we've got a couple of you. Now I want to hear from a different group of people. Anybody that's had to interview for a job? Anybody that has had to raise money for a new venture? Anybody that has tried to orange pill a colleague? Let me hear from that group. Clap if that's you. Okay, so that sets the stage for this panel. We're all in sales, even if it's just occasionally. And I think that we would all agree that approaching acquiring sales skill is something that is worthy of your effort. And it's a skill that when mixed with any of your other business skills becomes incredibly valuable. So let's get to the panel. We are going to take audience questions. We're going to do it a little bit differently. So please email your questions to Mike G, right there. So MikeG@unchained.com. He's going to be screening those and then giving those to me via my iPad. And that way we can integrate some of your questions. So I really want to get a couple of questions in here. It's going to be a tight rip, so we may not have time. Okay, starting off. Trey Sellers is VP of Enterprise Sales at Unchained, a Bitcoin financial services company built on collaborative custody. Trey has an extensive sales, finance, and consulting background. Let's hear it for Trey. Nick Gates leads Priority Power's Bitcoin mining team, which offers site development and power procurement. He's been in sales his entire career, spanning the energy services spectrum. We get our energy guy. Let's hear it. Shawn Yeager is head of sales at Amboss. Previously, he led BD at NYDIG. Throughout his career, he's created high-impact partnerships and teams and has generated over $300 million in revenue throughout his internet value chain. Let's hear it. Okay. Dustin Hillis is the founder of All Things New Venture, an equity-based growth consulting practice. He was previously the CEO of Southwestern, a family of 20 companies with over 3,000 sales professionals. He's an Amazon best-selling author, and his next book is due out next fall. All right, let's hear it. Okay, once again, we're going to be taking questions. Email those into MikeG@unchained.com. Okay, so let's start with our first question. Trey Sellers, this one is for you. So Unchained is in a highly regulated industry. Can you give us insight on how regulations can impact a sales strategy, and how does that change how you prospect? Nick, we're going to hear from you on this as well.
How do regulations impact sales strategy?
That's right. Yeah, Unchained, having to deal with all those money licenses, insurance boards across each state. I can't imagine.
Yeah, so we definitely are a regulated financial institution. That does put some guardrails on the way that we can talk about our products, the way that we can describe the benefits of them, the products that we can actually offer to the market. And so, when you're building a company, doing so with some level of constraint actually can be helpful in figuring out the best way to construct products and to talk about the narrative of a product. So I think, just generally speaking, having those constraints can be helpful. Within Bitcoin is it's kind of a gray area when it comes to some of this financial regulation. And so Unchained has been at the forefront of kind of forging a path in a lot of ways. For instance, collaborative custody, this idea of having multiple institutions, perhaps multiple single individuals collaborating to hold keys. The way that our self-custody option works is that our clients hold 2 keys out of 3 in a multi-sig quorum. Unchained holds the third key. Well, the client has full unilateral control over the asset there. Unchained acts as a key agent and a guide and a navigator for our clients through their Bitcoin journey and provides support and service for helping our clients to custody that Bitcoin and buy and sell it and that kind of thing. But, this is a model that is unique in traditional finance. You don't have this collaborative nature of holding gold or stocks or something like this, right? Bitcoin is unique in that it provides this. And so we are kind of at the forefront of ensuring that we are offering services and products that still conform to the financial regulations that are out there, but that are also operating within a Bitcoin native way. Bitcoin is our North Star, and we need to take that into account as we're approaching the market.
Very good. Nick, I know that in the power industry, you probably have some regulatory agencies to deal with and some of those things. Anything in there change the way that you sow seeds, that you prospect, do anything like that?
Yes, we focus on Texas because Texas is the freest energy market in the U.S. It stays out of FERC control. There is still a regulated portion of it. The poles and wires, the utilities is regulated, even though the energy is not. So you just have to work within that framework, study it, and basically present the best option you can. But everywhere we're building is deregulated, and we're going to continue to focus on that. Basically, more deregulation, the better, and better opportunities for a free market technology like Bitcoin mining. So, overall, we try to avoid it and work within the framework as well as we can. I'd say that
definitely changes the way you prospect, and in your case, you're going to avoid some of those regulatory traps. It's not worth your time. It's time to move on to something else that you can actually sell.
You won't find me in a co-op. No.
Yeah. Okay. That makes perfect sense. So as a professional salesperson, sometimes it does make sense to ignore certain things because it is absolutely going to be a time vampire for you. And you need to be focused on learning the places that you can actually get into and close a deal. Right. Okay. All right. So this next question is for Dustin. And I'm going to set this up a little bit. I started my career as an IT guy racking and stacking servers, believe it or not. That is until I discovered that the sales guy that sold that server made 10 times as much money as I did. And that certainly got my attention. So, Dustin, can sales skills be taught? What if you don't have the stereotypical sales personality? Is it a one-size-fits-all? Give us some insight on, variations in here.
Yeah, the question often comes in a different form when people hear that I have several thousand salespeople that I've worked with and recruit about 2,000 people a year. And usually they go door to door selling educational products. And they go, if they could do that, they could sell my product too. So then they say, could you introduce me to some of these top producers? I just need like 3 or 4. And what that tells me is most people think you're either born a salesperson or you're not. But the magic is in your training systems. Training begins in the recruiting process. So having a dialed in avatar of who you're looking for, a dialed in compensation plan, a step-by-step recruiting process, having people earn the job and learn the job as they're getting recruited. And then their first 3 months are the most important. And you'll know if they're a fit within 3 months or not. And if they're not, help them be successful somewhere else. So you can become a commission-based salesperson. So I'm assuming some of you are recruiting with this question. Then if you are already in the world of sales, you can learn sales. There's 3 areas to focus on if you're like cutting your teeth and you've never had your mindset of going, I need to learn this skill. The first area is motivation. Figure out how to motivate yourself. If you're the founder, put yourself on a commission plan. I help CEOs create their own comp plan all the time. It's highly motivational to say, as the CEO, my ordinary income, I'm going to increase by X when I make it rain and I bring in X amount of new business. Number 2, actually increase your skills. So get a coach, read some books, attend an actual sales seminar. They're all out there. That's what I did for 20 years. The third is systems. And I'm a big fan of Elon Musk. And I think the reason he can do everything he does is because your capacity, especially in the world of selling, is in direct proportion to the power of your systems. So what selling systems do you have to create more time? Do you have an assistant? Do you have a team to delegate things to? Because usually the people that are the most talented, the founders, the CEOs, can bring in the biggest deals. You're the most passionate, and selling is a transference of that energy. Selling is a transference of passion, and I'm assuming everybody in the room has that. So find ways to create selling systems which free up your time to make it rain more.
Heck yes, let's make it rain. Can I get a round of applause for making it rain? I love it.
Can I tack on to that? Just one thing.
man.
You said, is there a one size fits all? And I have seen one trait be common across consistently good salespeople, and that's hard work. Now, there's no substitute for it. If you don't work hard, you can hit one or two licks, but you're not going to be a consistently good salesperson. That is the one common trait.
You know, salespeople do have incredibly raw exposure to the free market, and I think that's one of the reasons why it creates such amazing incentives, because if you don't do the work, it becomes very obvious very quick. Okay, so we're going to continue to pull on this thread a little bit. Shawn, how does selling for a Bitcoin industry-specific company differ from a SaaS or payments company? Is it a different attitude?
I don't think so. I mean, I think it depends on whether you're selling within the industry or outside. Within, it's a very small universe. So your total addressable market could be much smaller. Your pool of prospects is likely much smaller. The tools that you might use, something, I'm just going to pick one, no endorsement, Apollo, brilliant tool for prospecting, buyer intent signals, these sorts of things. To Dustin's point, these systems that are so crucial, they may or may not serve you when you're working in a somewhat insular, smaller market. So, I think a lot of the challenge is how do you bridge over to adjacent or other segments? I think often we are engineering-led companies, and real talk that often leads to let's build it because we can, perhaps rather than let's build it because the market wants it or a customer demands it. So I think often there's overcoming shiny object syndrome and really dialing in on what customers need and want. So I think, perhaps not unlike any other emerging tech sector, there are particular challenges to fishing in a smaller pond, to often selling to early stage founders or leaders who are themselves very technical, engineering minded. They're perhaps not the traditional economic decision maker, ultimate buyer, et cetera. So it's dialing in for some of those particulars, but I think by and large, the core disciplines, certainly the things that Dustin mentioned, all carry over.
Okay, I love that. Yeah. Okay, some of us are Bitcoin specific, some of us are not. That is super specific. Okay, so we've got a few more questions, but I've got a couple of lightning rounds in here that I want to make sure that we get to. Because I'm interested in getting you all some practical, tactical tips, tricks, tools. Guys, lightning round, starting with Trey. What are some things that you are using in your day-to-day life? Practical tips, tricks, tools, technologies. Really quickly, off the top of your head, what are some things that you're touching on a day-to-day basis?
So I think the most important thing when you are in sales in Bitcoin is to work really hard to simplify your message, because Bitcoin is complicated and it feels intimidating to the people that you are talking to. I work with a lot of individuals who are coming to me, help me understand how to secure my Bitcoin. They don't necessarily know all the technical ins and outs. If you can simplify your message, you're going to get a lot further in building trust. And ironically, trust is very important in sales. In Bitcoin, we try not to trust anybody or need to trust anybody, but you still need that component.
Okay.
Ask questions. It's pretty simple. Orange pilling, for example, if you're trying to relate to someone and get it so he understands, well, why is Bitcoin important to you? It doesn't matter. He might not understand that or care about that. So If I'm talking to a guy that is a sports guy and I'm trying to use a video game reference, it's never going to get through. So not only simplifying your message, but having a few versions of it, and like how to get to that and relate to someone is by asking them about themselves, about their life, and about their business. And the more you ask them, the more you'll ultimately open up for yourself, for them, and be able to relate to them a lot easier and explain something. So be able to have that clear, concise middle pitch, but curtail it to the individual you're talking to. And the only way to figure out how to do that is ask them questions.
All right, Nick. I love that you threw in some buzzwords there too. But Nick, that really is an important lesson. We all have 2 ears and one mouth. And as a professional salesperson, it's not about always knowing all the right answers. It's actually about knowing what questions to ask, how to probe, how to build trust. You can get really far by asking questions and just letting people tell you exactly what problem they need solved. And hopefully that's a match for what you have to provide. Okay. Shawn?
Next up, same question.
Tips, tricks, tools.
Yeah, to echo,
tech.
Successful selling is solving problems, and so I couldn't overemphasize the importance of what Nick said in terms of and the panel in terms of asking questions and active listening. A couple of quick tools. So I have become over the last 6 months a very, very avid user of various LLM or so-called AI tools. As someone once said, and it stuck with me, it is not that you'll be replaced by AI, it is that you'll be replaced by another person who knows how to use AI. And so there are some incredible tools. I could name a ton. One particular product that I'm obsessed with is Fathom Video. Fathom.video. I have no affiliation. I'm just a happy customer and user. It is one of an AI-powered transcription tool aimed at salespeople. You have it join your Google Meet, your Zoom video. It will then take the transcript. It will break out components like conversations about budget, objections, competitor mentions. And this is a great example of a tool. I mean, we're a small team. We're an early stage startup 2 years in. I need every bit of help that I can get because we're seed funded. And that means you got to be scrappy. And so that kind of product is a force multiplier.
Big time. I love those techs. Personally, I use Fireflies. Fathom's a good one. Otter AI. But any of those things that can help you collect information from a prospect and then pass that along to your engineers and other ops team members effectively reduces the amount of work cycles. Love it.
All right, I want you to time me to see how long I'm going to get through this. Everybody needs a cycle of the sell. I think this is the number one tool every business that's selling anything needs. I'm going to walk you through it very fast. You start with lead generation. You can create the spokes of a lead generation wheel. I like having at least 10. So LinkedIn, referrals, networking events. Get 10 ways you generate leads. Next is your approach. Once you have those leads, how are you calling on those leads? Every business needs a well-defined, written out approach that you do and you train other people to do. So literally, what do you say when you call people? Scripting is the highest form of language according to Crucial Conversations, which was written by 5 PhDs. The highest paid people in the world use scripts. So what are your approach script on how you set the appointment? So the purpose of the approach is to set the appointment, not to sell your product. Next is you have the appointment. So there's a section of the cycle of the sale called the introduction. This is where you're asking questions, you're qualifying, you're answering objections before they come up. Do you have an introduction for introducing people to what you do before you go into the presentation? Or are you going right into the presentation and praying and spraying? If you're a pray and spray guy, I highly encourage you to create an introduction. Again, that's where you're building rapport, you're asking questions, you're qualifying, you're uncovering the need, and you're answering objections before they come up. Next is the presentation. The presentation should actually be the shortest part of the cycle of your sell. I see most sales professionals get this wrong. If you have 60 points of why somebody should buy from you, guess how many they need to hear to buy? 1. They need to hear 1 point, but they need to hear the point that applies to them. It also should be educational and it should be fun. Make your presentation fun, funny, use humor. take effort. Actually create a presentation that engages people. Next, answering objections. Have you ever written down the objections you commonly get and think of what are the answers to them? Here's an advanced technique with that. Do third-party selling and write out stories that other people, other customers have said of having the common objection that you get. Memorize it. Then use that answer every time somebody gives you that objection where you go, I understand exactly how you feel. Chad felt the same way. And what he found was the answer to the objection.
I love that.
Next is the closing part of your cycle to sell. You need a closing process. If you do not have a closing process, your business will be very limited. It'll be limited to your ability to either just take on orders or marketing. But if you want to close those fence setters, which is about 80% of the people you're talking to, a closing process will do that. So it starts with trial closing, making sure they're interested, a price build up where you actually make them think the price is going to be here, and then you drop the price down. And then you actually literally need words to ask for their business. You will make so much money. People want that neuro-linguistic programming where you tell them, you should do this. Have your contract with you and take orders right there on the spot. A lot of you could do that and you don't even know it because it's fear. Get over the fear, have a closing process. Then the last step, and you're done, is referrals. Every single person in this room should have a referral process. After you've satisfied somebody and they're like, you are the man, you've exceeded my expectations, don't get one referral, get 5 referrals from every single person you meet with. And that completes the circle of life and it just keeps your business going.
Oh, yes. I love that. Oh, man. Spontaneous applause.
Was that less than 5 minutes?
Yeah, that was less than 5 minutes.
Perfect.
And I think that, some of those things tie together. For instance, Shawn was once again talking about recording your meetings and using LLMs to get those things. You can actually glean some of these things. It's amazing how you get on a phone call and you say something and you're like, oh, I wish I had recorded that because that was the perfect way to say it. If you are recording it using a Fathom or a Fireflies, you can actually go back, pull that out, start to incorporate that, look at the way that you said things. And then one of my personal tools that I love the most is once I do figure out a script, especially if it has something to do with me crafting a text or a response to a referral or crafting an email, I use something called a text replacement. A lot of people will just write these down in a Word file and then copy and paste those, but you can actually even automate that. I know that on my iPhone, if I type a specific word, it'll actually replace that with a whole pre-written paragraph. Things that I end up having to write over and over and over that I can just generate, modify, saves an enormous amount of time, and also keeps me from getting off script. Okay, let's, how much time do we have left? We are done. Okay, all right, so shameless plugs, how can they find you? My best place is LinkedIn. Hit me up on LinkedIn, Chad Blackburn on LinkedIn with Cherry Becker. Trey, shameless plug, how can they find you?
Go to unchained.com and check out what we offer there. Otherwise, you can find me on LinkedIn as well, Trey Sellers.
Nick?
LinkedIn as well.
ShawnYeager.com for personal, amboss.tech, amboss.tech for our Lightning startup.
DustinHillis.com, and that's for keynote speaking. AllThingsNewVentures.com is my sweat equity partnership company where I help companies grow in exchange for equity. And then all the normal socials. And I also have a podcast on Spotify called All Things New Ventures Podcast. And this type of content you're hearing me talk about is what every single podcast is about. So if you're going to pick one, I'd say go with subscribing to the podcast on Spotify.
All right. Thank you guys for being such a great audience. Let's hear it for this panel one more time. Excellent. Thanks, everybody.